Let's do some real configuration on the Cube router itself. In this lecture, we're going to go ahead and enable the Cube router, the required commands we're going to enter to the Cube, and we're going to add the trusted IP addresses. Remember, this step is going to accept only traffic from the trusted IP addresses. Other IP addresses which are not in the trusted list will not be able to send or receive any messages, any signaling from the Cube router to and fro. Then we'll proceed further and configure the dial peers. Remember the LAN dial peer and the WAN dial peer. For each session, we need them. And finally, we'll make some test calls. All right, so let's take a look at the commands that we're going to enter to the Cube router. These are the commands that we're going to enter to make it a Cube. Voice service VoIP to enter into the configuration for the voice services. And then we're going to enter the command mode border hyphen element license periodicity days 15. Basically, this command is going to check the license, which is honor based, and now with the version v17.3.3, periodically licenses are checked with Cisco. Versions prior to 17.3.3, the command mode border hyphen element license capacity 100 would work. Since we are using CSR 1000V router, which is running on a virtual machine, we are not going to use this command. Otherwise, it's going to throw us an error message. So let's go ahead, copy this and put that on our router. We are logged into our Cube router. Now I'm going to go ahead and paste the commands. Perfect. So there is no error message. We entered into voice service VoIP and finally entered our command mode border hyphen element license periodicity days 15. This way, our router is acting as a cube now. Let's proceed further and add the IP trusted list. Before that, let's add one more command for intersignaling. Remember that we discussed about that SIP to SIP, SIP to SC23, SC23 to SIP. The interoperability is possible in Cisco Unified Border Element. It's an SBC that allows these protocols to be interworking with each other. In our infrastructure, we do not have SC23 set up. We want to keep it plain and simple, SIP to SIP. So we're going to go ahead and allow the traffic SIP to SIP. On the LAN side, we're talking to the call manager server from SIP's perspective over SIP protocol. And on the WAN side, to the service provider, we're also talking SIP. So let's enter that command. Now let's go ahead and add the IP address trusted list. I'm going to copy these commands. I'm going to go to the router and enter these commands. No error, everything is clean. So we have added our CUCM server 1.101, and then we've also added our IP address for the service provider, IP telephony service provider 1.201. Our router is fully capable of working as a cube router. Now this is the time that we're going to go ahead and enter the dial peers in. Let's go ahead and add our dial peers to the cube router as discussed. Now, the first dial peer is going to receive traffic from the call manager towards our cube. So this is going to be the LAN dial peer. So the first line is just the description. The session protocol SIP v2 is the protocol for signaling. Incoming call number .t is the command to match any call which is coming towards the Cisco Unified Border Element SBC. So it's going to accept everything .t. And then these two commands are there to bind the gigabit Ethernet 1 as the source interface for signaling and for the media as well. Finally, we have got the codec G711 EULA hard coded to this dial peer. Because this is SIP, we don't have any problem in terms of the bandwidth. So we're going to put it G711 EULA. Last but not the least, no VAD. Voice activity detection is bad. All right, so do not have VAD enabled. Make sure that you go ahead and type in no VAD because by default, VAD is enabled. So if you don't type this command, voice activity detection will be turned on. And for any silence, which may be natural, will be chopped off. So you don't want voice traffic to be chopped off. Otherwise, users would start to complain that they're missing on their conversation. Okay, so let's go ahead, copy this and go to the router, paste this. Back to our cube router, let me put the commands in. All right, so we have put in our dial peer voice 100 VoIP command and all the copied command into what we discussed earlier. So our cube router is now capable of receiving the incoming signals from the call manager to itself. But what it does next, it has to process that call and send the call towards the service provider. So just with this dial pair, things are not going to work. All right, so let's add the second set of dial pair. So let's go ahead and take a look at that first. We are going to create two dial pairs, one for long distance call and the other for the international calls. Dial pair voice 200 VoIP would go ahead and create a dial pair for the long distance calls pattern. If you take a look at it, the number one digit is the first digit to be dialed, and then any digit between 2 to 9. Finally, there are 9 digits that will be accepted. So in total, 9 dots represents 9 variable numbers, any numbers between 0 to 9, and then 2 to 9 restricts the digits between 2 to 9. 0 and 1 will not be accepted. The first digit is specific to be 1. Okay, so this is the destination pattern in the United States of America for long distance. Similarly, for international calls, we have got the destination pattern 011T. That means that any destination pattern, any number that is the destination number, will have to have 011 in the beginning and then any number after that. So let's go ahead and configure that on our cube router. Back to the cube router, let me paste the commands. So our second dial pair, which is the outbound WAN dial pair from Cube to IT service provider for the long distance calls, is added. It's time for us to go ahead and add this third dial pair as well. Third dial pair copied, and now I'm going to paste it. It's pasted here. So finally, we have got all our dial pairs added as well to the system. So we have performed these three first steps. We have enabled the cube router. We have added the trusted IP list, and then we have configured the dial pairs as well. This is the time that we launch our IP phones, one registered to the CUCM server and the other PSTN number as well. So let me launch those in front of you and let's make some test call. All right. On the left hand side, you see our phone registered with Cisco Unified Communication Manager, and the phone on the right hand side is representing the PSTN number. So we're going to make the call to this line, which is 1455222124. Let's initiate a call. One, two. Perfect. We received the call. Let's answer it. I've put the calls on mute now, and there is RTP which is being flowed. If you notice, the compression is G711 EULA. That's the codec which is selected between the devices. And there are packets which are increasing on both the side. Byte sent, byte received, byte sent, byte received. So RTP is flowing between these two endpoints. Finally, we tested our fourth step, which was call testing. We made some outbound call from our IP phone to the PSTN, and it all worked. So our configuration is just fine. We are good to go ahead and do some more configurations.